カイゼリン・アンダーグ。アンダーグ帝国の支配者。
And someone who unironically still shops at Hot Topic in this day and age.
Here comes a new challenger!
We opened this week with our constantly truant main antagonist finally deciding to get off her lazy ass. Granted, they did give some justification, saying that she had been recovering from some injuries, possibly from 300 years prior, based on what we get from this episode at least, which if that's the case, lady, you ever hear of using bandages? Well, literally no time to ask questions, as we just cut to the Precure in Skyland, checking in on a reported disturbance with a portal to the Empire opening, and seemingly letting one of their enemy into the kingdom. Sure enough, they ran into Twilight, I mean the Kaiserin, and when I say Twilight, I mean the eventual Cure Scarlet, and not the pony, even though I do have to kind of bring back this reference to the Kaiserin's VA. What, did Celestia kick you out again, Luna? And yes, I know she looked like Sunset Shimmer, but come on, I gotta go with Luna. Then hell, she did blame the princess of this kingdom for something she did centuries prior, so it is kind of related. Anyway, she did immediately nuke the Precure like a good final boss should, and even made some decent threats.
Start? I don't feel so good.
And again, likely being aware of how many episodes they have left, Sora immediately tried to learn about the Kaiserin's backstory, but of course was denied because this lady was a stubborn bitch, so why bother being interesting now? Okay, to her credit, she does understand her tropes well. Because as Rule 1 of the Toy Handbook says, the protagonist should never open with their finisher, as that's always an instant defeat flag. With that, she managed to KO all of the Cures, except for, conveniently enough, Elle, as she wanted to have a little chat with her.
Princess,
actually, if you want to blame anyone for your limited screen time, you should probably blame the director or producers of the show. However, she was saved by the Majestic Chronicle kind of pulling off a Deus Ex Machina and zawilding everyone except for the princess. And I guess she managed to spread it to others, so she went right and only to Sora and Majou because, as I keep saying, these are the only real characters of importance. And with that, they took down the Kaiserin while she was frozen, or they should have, but instead... Precure and time travel. Oh, hi there, Mr. Shark. So, you ready for your big jump today? Yep, they had been seemingly sent 300 years into the past, and at least for Sora, they met an unfamiliar princess. Yeah, I'm willing to believe that our blue lead just isn't that much of a history buff. Otherwise, Skyland must really suck at maintaining any records of its past, as 300 years really isn't that far back, relatively speaking, that the name of a former princess should be unknown. Anyway, said forgotten princess was named Elrain, and yeah, I think we can all guess where this was going. Though surprisingly, she wasn't voiced by Elsvier Aoi Koga, but rather... FYI, I do prefer the 2007 design, but this one has its merits too. They tried to explain who they were to Princess Neko, and also ignored the rules of time travel, and explained her own backstory to her. I mean, granted, it's not made clear whether or not this was real, or a simulation created by the Chronicle. A scene at the end of this episode does seem to suggest the former, but still, the princess thankfully didn't believe them, both for the sake of preserving timelines, and a decent gag of the three Cures trying and failing to transform, due to them being cut off from their powers in the past. Okay, princess, do you want to send them to the nut house or the funny farm? Anyway, she let the Cures stay at her castle for the night, but they wouldn't be able to get any sleep as the Empire struck, being led by... Then again, with that mohawk and that voice, I'm pretty sure he's also the leader of the Dark Signers. Though he did need a big spooter to terrorize the kingdom, especially with no Precure in this time period. Regardless, we did get one of the better moments of the series where Sora, and later Majou, managed to hold off the early Romborgs without any powers. The former did with the return of her impressive parkour, while the latter just used her chocobo. It honestly more to make up for the fact that we didn't get any proper Precure fight this week, and in a lot of ways this was better than previous fights, as it wasn't forced by a monster of the week from out of nowhere, but rather our heroines actively choosing to participate in a war in spite of their lack of any superpowers at this point. It's just one of the better displays of pure heroism in the show, called Hero Girls, which is a little unfortunate, but still appreciated. However, they couldn't do anything about the Romborgs powered up by the Kaiser.
Slow clap? Really? Kinda played out, dude.
With that, they were forced to retreat, and I guess Skyland really does suck at maintaining their history, as the legend of the Precure that we learned about all the way back in episode 5 had one little error to it. The princess didn't summon a Precure from the heavens, but rather... it's been done twice. Anyway, Cure Noble's design was a less blingy version of Cure Majesty, which I wasn't even that much of a big fan of to begin with, but I do kind of like this design a little more because it's not nearly as busy. I did like this hair a little more, if only because I'm a fan of drills. During all of this, the Kaiser met with Kaiserin, who of course was his... You do realize that Kaiserin literally means the Kaiser's wife, because if you do, well, you don't, never mind. Honestly, that backstory alone would have been reason enough for this seemingly pacifist young maiden to become the next big bad, but no, we'd have to save those answers for next time, as we just kind of ended here.
Well, there it is.
Well, I guess this is a pretty good episode for what they are to stuff into 23 minutes. Granted, a lot of that had to do with the fact that this was a noticeably faster paced episode than usual, with things just going from one thing to the next. It was never distractingly fast, but it also did highlight how they have a lot to cover in these last 4 episodes, and I'm not totally convinced they'll be able to pull it off. Going into this episode, I wasn't expecting that much out of the constantly absentee Kaiserin, and coming out of it, yeah, I'm still not totally sold on her as the big bad of the series, but I guess I can appreciate a little more context. I mean, for one thing, there's nothing really special about her design that screams final boss, just some middle-aged lady who never grew out of her angsty goth phase. If anything, she wouldn't look out of place in a lineup of just regular female generals in this franchise. The only thing that signifies her as the leader of the Empire was her powers, which just feels kind of out of nowhere when she's done so little in the series. Hopefully this will be remedied in the next few episodes, but again, with how much else they have to wrap up, including appropriately enough, a Christmas episode, I doubt they'll be able to make an engaging final boss by the end. Conversely though, I am at least a little interested in Princess Elraine and her backstory relating to the Kaiserin. Obviously she's a past life of the current princess, so it could be assumed that things won't work out the best between these two girls, so that will be interesting to see. And as for the episode itself, well, I'm not the biggest fan of a show suddenly introducing time travel near the end, as in cases like this, it's clearly being used as means of some quick world building that they failed to do throughout the series. I did like seeing Sora and Masho being hero girls even without powers. Moments like this highlight the show's main theme much more effectively than many pointless out-of-nowhere fights. It also highlights how the show probably would have been better off with just these 3, but let's save talking about that for the overview. And overall, this was a decent enough episode as a means of starting up the endgame of the show. While I certainly have my doubts about them producing an effective ending for the show, at least these hero girls are sticking to their morals no matter how much limited time they have left. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the first part of the Max Heart review done, mostly because I couldn't work on it Wednesday night. Granted, I think it was totally worth it because I got to see Godzilla -1, and it was a great film, but we still might try to get it out early this week before maybe the Big G decides to attack our island next or something. So do look forward to it. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and you'll get him next time, Jaws. You'll get him next time.